Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Newcastle podcast with Global Sports Podcast Network. I am your host today, so that is me, Nicola, and I am joined by the two that make the troublesome threesome, who are probably the least enthusiastic I have ever seen them, including myself, because we're all tired. It's been a long week, and the weekend seems to have gone away in a flash. So I am firstly joined by my girlie, Jo. How are you?
I'm all good. Just unfortunately fresh out of a 6-1 loss to Liverpool for the lasses, but we'll not talk about that because it's about the men today.
Let's not talk about that.
No.
And I'm also joined by Kevin. How are you?
Very good. We are all tired, right? But I think it's because of the international break. The international break just drains you, so thank God there's no more of them left.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's a bit of a weird weekend for us, this one. So we don't play until Monday night, which will be tonight when you guys are listening to this. So we've had a full weekend of football. Obviously, Spurs doing Spursy things and losing to Ipswich one week and beating Man City another weekend. Yep, don't know how that goes. So we are doing, we're switching it up. We are doing our match preview today, ready for the lads playing Monday night tonight. So I thought we could kick the first part off by talking about something that seems to be of a talking point on social media, sort of to the latter part of last week and into the weekend, of a potential new stadium for Newcastle. I know we've all been quite vocal about it in our group chat. Kev is shaking his head for anyone that can't see. I know we've all been quite vocal about it in our group chat and have all got different opinions, but how are we feeling? So I think I'll come to Kev first because he's sitting there shaking his head.
Don't come to me first. Yeah, I mean, we did a wild call Wednesday, and I think we talked about this for something like 12 to 14 minutes. It was me, Joe, and Ian. And I'm just so against the new stadium. It's like, and I get it, right? Genuinely, the demand for tickets and the people who can't get in, it is unfortunate. And it's not all just the people. I've seen people online say, well, you should have kept your ticket through the rubbish years and you would still have a ticket now, which there's an element of truth to that, but I don't really believe it because my dad was one of the ones who gave up his ticket. But yeah, it's a case of it's. I just don't think we should move. I think even if we can't get above 60,000, 65,000 on the current site, we should limit ourselves at that. I just don't think we should go further. The main reason is our atmosphere is so unique and it's so special. It's in a city centre. I mean, what you're going to do, you're going to move the stadium miles away from a city centre. There's no pubs, there's no atmosphere. Everybody goes in, very posh, prawn sandwiches, none of that working class history, none of the cathedral on the hill, none of under the lights of St James's Park. And again, we're one of the rare teams. I think it was us and about 4 other teams who have only ever played at one kind of stadium, and we've always played at St James's Park. So for me, I'd rather stick at 52,000, even if we can't. I mean, we can upgrade, but even if we couldn't upgrade at all, I'd rather stick. And I'll get so much stick for that. Bring it on! I'm telling you now, but it'll have a massive impact. Look at our home form under Eddie Howe since the place has been rocking. We hardly ever lose at home, and when we do, it's always quite close. Other than Nottingham Forest when Chris Wood channeled in a Didier Drogba. But apart from that game, I'd rather not leave at all. I don't want the endless amount of posh sweets, and I don't want the endless amount of £17.50 for a hot dog. I don't want that ever. Keep it how it is, please, or just improve where we are, but don't move.
Okay, so Kev has strong feelings about that. Jo, do you agree, or are you on the fence, or what are you?
I'm all over the place, I've got to be honest. I do lean towards wanting to stay. That's my kind of underlying thing. And like Kev said, we have discussed this before. My main thing I'd love to stay. I'd love it to be expanded wherever it can be expanded. I totally understand why I think it's not going to be, and I totally understand why I'm almost 100% sure we'll get a new stadium over an expansion, by the way. Because I don't actually think it's just about getting an extra 8,000, 10,000 people in there, I'll be honest. It's more about all the other things they can bring to a stadium. I'm talking the owners and revenue here. I'm not talking about us as fans, unfortunately. I'm talking know, what they think they can get out of, say, a 70,000 capacity or potentially more. So you're talking about bringing more gigs in, you're talking about bringing NFL, you're talking about, I don't know, there's all sorts of different aspects to it, which I don't think they can bring to St James's Park, which is a massive shame, by the way, because yes, underlying, I want to stay at St James's Park. 100% do. And I've said it a million times over, the only way I would be partially happy about moving is if it was literally next door on Leeds' Park, but then you've got all of that massive issue. But Kev's bang on. If it moves anywhere other than the likes of Leeds' Park, I think it's going to rip the soul out of the club.
Yeah.
So no, this is where I'm torn and I'm all over the place with it, because I totally understand why, from a business perspective, by the way, they want to have this new stadium. But I totally understand from a fan perspective as to why we want to stay. However, like Kev said, Ian had this conversation with us as an older fan and made a really big point that we hadn't considered before, didn't he, Kev? About
He did.
the fact that he, ironically, isn't as attached to St James's Park, even though he's as a ground and a literal location. He's been there longer than us.
Yeah.
Seen so many changes that he doesn't feel that connection that we feel. I've obviously seen a bit more than Kev. He literally has his pretty much core and main memories from the current kind of visual as is St James's Park, whereas I do have others, but I am still more leaning towards Kev's kind of way of thinking, which I think a lot of fans are. I'm just being realistic as to why I think they want a new stadium, by the way, that's all.
I think even with the older fans, right, the Gallagher is the Gallagher, isn't it? If you imagine moving to a brand new stadium, right, there is no Gallagher. There is no, it's just, there's no like pubs all over the place. It's not a city centre ground. You don't just get off at the central station and walk up.
That's why it has to be Leazes, Kev. Do you not think? That's why it has to kind of be. They've got to do something, man. If they insist on having a new stadium,
even if
they've
it's
got to throw
Leazes,
some cash at people and bribe Leazes to be ours or something. And I know people go on it being protected land, but I don't know. Don't get me started on that either.
I'd rather just build up a Gallagher, and then whatever you get out of that, and if that's the best you can do, that's the best you can do. But we don't want to be a NFL ground. We don't want to. I mean,
we don't.
Like,
but it's definitely coming from a business point of view, isn't it?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think we've discussed this before, and I think it was actually us three when we were talking about the modern footballer, like what is the difference between footballers now to, even 10, 15 years ago. Football in general as a sport is more business like now. It's not about enjoyment, and unfortunately, it's actually not really about the fans anymore, which is a really sad thing to actually sit on this podcast and say. It's actually not about the fans. I am of the opinion of I don't want to see St James Park no more. As in, like, I want to stay there, if that makes sense. I don't want to move. I don't want a new stadium. However, I have got a really horrible feeling that it's going to happen. And unfortunately, and I think I said this, it will become soulless. The club will become soulless.
100%.
You look at 100%. You look at the likes of, ironically, the West Ham Stadium. That, to me, is got to be up there with one of the worst stadiums in the Premier League. The run track completely ruins it. And the atmosphere, other than that bubble song that they play at the beginning.
Which is awful.
By the way. It's soulless. Man City ground, soulless. The Tottenham Spurs ground, soulless. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head.
Obviously, they said about Arsenal, to be fair, when they moved to the Emirates, didn't they? They said that it was, even their fans said they would much prefer to have stayed at Highbury. But again, it was another case of that wasn't the fans choosing to go to the Emirates.
No.
That's and this is where us and them, and it isn't them. And we don't own it, unfortunately, and that's the real problem.
I am a little bit bored, and again, I'm about to go on a tangent. I know the podcast is about to review the game tomorrow, but I'm a little bit bored of whenever I log onto my social media, whether it be X or TikTok or anything like that, Instagram, of the rush of influencers that seems to be at every single football game. Whether they're football fans or not, that is, to me, one of the things that is drawing the soul out of club football, and it's like business and revenue, and that is what I'm really, really worried that Newcastle are going to become like, because, like we say, Newcastle's ground is probably always voted up there with the best atmosphere in the Premier League. So yeah, I'm a little bit worried about it, guys. I'm not going to lie.
To be fair, when you look at atmospheres in football, it's like, everyone slates Old Trafford, but I still think it's got a very good atmosphere, even though there's a lot of tourists there because they have played there for so long.
Yeah.
And then Anfield's a great atmosphere because, again, they've played there for so long. We could move and we have this wonderful state-of-the-art stadium, but exactly what you've just said there, Nicola, it's filled with tourists and influencers, and the working class people can't really afford a ticket anymore. And then all of a sudden, it's like, well, what is that club? Like, yeah, it's called Newcastle United, but like, there's no like PSG moments happening where everyone loses just the absolute. I'm not going to say the word, but yeah, they lose it. But I honestly think if you look at it from a football club, and I know it's all about business, but your home ground and your home atmosphere is supposed to have such a big effect on the results. At the minute we have that, why on earth would we want to move? It just makes zero sense. Yes, there's fans out there who now all of a sudden want to come back to the games. Oh, I'm a massive Newcastle fan. I've supported them for 50 years. I give up my ticket in my year because it weren't worth supporting. Well, we're not going to be worth supporting again when it's an 80,000 seater stadium and there's 60,000 people in and only 40,000 of them are actual fans and there's 20,000 empty seats. Like, what's that? That's not Newcastle United. It shouldn't happen. It should never happen. But you're right. It probably is going to happen. So I need to get used to it, don't I?
Well, don't we all? Because I think we all agree that we probably shouldn't move, but we don't own the club, unfortunately. So, yeah, not down to us. I think that's probably a great place to leave the first part. So we will go to our first ad read out by Joe, please.
No worries. Here at Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner, with 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs. It's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr.
Lovely job, Joe. Thank you.
Nice.
Right, now let's focus on Monday night's game against West Ham. Thought this next part we could just cover the three lads that have done us absolutely proud on international. Can't talk about them highly enough. And how we expect to sort of line up for Monday night's game and what we're expecting to see. Do we think we're going to be fresh from the international break? So I just want to kickstart by saying Tino, Lewis and Anthony Gordon on international duty. 10 out of 10 from me. What boys. They performed so well and done themselves so proud, and I think have, proven that they deserve to be in that squad when obviously Thomas Tuchel takes over more frequently. And I'm glad that Carsley took a punt on them all because they deserved it. How are you guys feeling about them? Joe, come to you.
Well, like you said, they were fantastic, weren't they? I like what Carsley did, I'll be honest. He gave a lot of players their debuts, and he was at 8 players, I think. And that's that. I love that because it does give Tuchel something. Tuchel, I never know how to say his name.
Same, Thomas. We'll just call him Thomas. He's our mate.
Big Tommy T. Yeah. So Tommy, it gave him something to think about, didn't it? But it also gave him it's what I would call a welcome headache, isn't it? Instead of just having the so-called obvious team to inherit from Southgate, which we all agree just got a bit stale.
Yeah.
You're bringing in not only our boys, but there was some other guys as well who I'm big fans of from other clubs as well. But yeah, I think England, it looks a lot brighter moving forward. It'll be interesting to see what he does with it. I think we have touched on that a lot as to his style of play. I don't know too much about what he's going to do, so it's hard to predict. But in terms of our boys, they were fantastic, weren't they? And it was great to see all three of them start the last game, because that hasn't happened, as we discussed, since 97 as well.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a proud moment for Newcastle, and then you heard Eddie talking about it, and he genuinely seemed really proud of the three of them, didn't he? It was just a bit of a father figure type of moment, wasn't it, the way he was talking about them. So no, I expect them to come back with their heads held high, bring that in their performances for us as well. So I expect, not that I didn't, by the way, but I expect them to start strongly tomorrow. But I did expect that before anyway, because they've been great for us, those three. Exactly what you said. They fully deserved what they got out of the England call-ups.
Yeah, they were very good. Kev?
Yeah, it's just to back up Joe a little bit. He has made the pool a lot bigger in terms of that typical, like the Fodens and Trents and all them. Tuchel now comes in, but for me it's a negative because, well, a couple of things really. I don't want anybody to take them players off us because I think they are absolutely brilliant and I'd love to keep them for the next 10 years if possible. And the other one is if Thomas Tuchel comes in and just goes with the typical Phil Foden, Harry Kane, the usual team we've seen for the last however many years, it's like, well, what's the point in having these players come up and do well? Because we're not even going to get picked anyway. I mean, that would just put me on such a, I'm not interested in England still. Whereas if he comes in and he keeps picking my Morgan Gibbs-White and my Curtis Jones and the Anthony Gordons, I'd be like, I'm going to keep watching England. I
That's what we
might
need.
believe
Yeah.
I might believe again one day. So he's got a big, big job when he comes in January. But I mean, all the Newcastle players can do is just, I think it'll be huge for the rest of the squad in a weird way. Players like Willock will be looking at that thinking, I want to be in. I think Longstaff will be looking at it and thinking, well, I want a bit of that. If Tino can get called up, who's only been here for 2 years, I can get called up. So
100%.
like I say, I think it does more for the rest of the squad than what we probably think. I mean, I think it also backs up Eddie Howe just a tiny bit more of, well, look, if you trust us, I will turn you into an international football.
And
Look what I've done with the likes of blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, it's going to be big for the rest of the squad. I just hope that, I don't think it will have gone. I hope players like Tino don't get carried away and think that they're the big deal now, because we've still got a lot of development to go.
Yeah.
And obviously talks of Trippier being back. Trippier started to get favoured before he got injured. Trippier was back in the
You're
team.
right.
He was the first choice right back again, and he got injured, and Tino got back in. So it'll be interesting as well. It's a tough one for Eddie.
Yeah. Just off the back of the England break, I thought it was quite interesting to see players like, well, Anthony Gordon, I think Jude Bellingham picked something up, and I also think Jack Grealish picked something up about Lee Carsley bringing the enjoyment back of being in an England shirt, which made me think what was going on behind the scenes when Southgate was obviously in charge. So,
And
like you
Ben
say,
White.
and Ben White,
he'll play again.
Well, I think, did he not pick up an injury last week?
No,
Anyway.
Ben White outright refused to play for England under Southgate, and now he's come out and said he's available for selection again since Southgate's gone. So definitely a bigger story there. But
there's definitely a bigger story there. Yeah, but it's nice to see. I know they're not all Newcastle players that I've mentioned, but it's nice to see them getting their confidence back. And obviously, that's what we want, is players to obviously enjoy playing in the England shirt. Newcastle. Let's focus on them. How are we thinking that, obviously we're coming off the back of, some relatively good wins, and great wins actually, and we are in pretty good form. So how are we thinking Eddie is going to shape up on Monday evening? Again, probably a headache, because who do you drop? Who do you pick? So, Kev, what are you thinking?
Has to be unchanged. I mean, the same team that's beat was it who was it? Who was our game before Forest? Arsenal.
Oh, Arsenal, yeah.
Yeah. Same team which has beat both of them. I think the midfield has to be Bruno, Willock and Longstaff, even though that means you leave out Tonali and Joelinton goes to a wing. But at the minute, I think until new signings come and Botman comes back, I honestly think the team we have played in the last 2 games, balance-wise, attacking, defending, controlling possession. We actually control possession against Forest, which is something we spoke about on here a lot, and we did well with it and created chances. So I actually think the team of Pope, Hall, Burnshaw, Tino, Longstaff, Bruno, Willock, Joelinton, Isak and Gordon, I think that team is our team now until January. I don't think anybody else can get in there. Joelinton and Gordon switching wings. I love how we had a right wing problem. Gordon fixed it for a short time, and then Joelinton cuts inside from a right and hits an unbelievable finish on his left foot. So that problem's well and truly solved with them two all of a sudden. So I would be amazed if he makes any changes to the starting lineup. But I think it's brilliant. I think it's class for the team, because you look at players like Tonali who'll be desperate to come in. I know Kraft was doing well before he got injured. Actually, that's the thing. We can't play Burn. It'll have to be Lloyd Kelly, because Kraft's injured and Burn's suspended. So Lloyd Kelly will come in at centre half. That'll be a forced change. But in terms of actual pick changes, none. But a forced change, I think Lloyd Kelly will come in at left centre half.
Yeah. Joe, anything to add?
I know, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? Unless there's something obviously that's happened in training that we don't know about, which, there will be plenty that happens in training that we don't know about, by the way. So he might see certain things that he might think, oh, well, for this game, I might prefer someone over someone, i.e. Tonali, for example.
Yeah.
Bring him in. But, personally, Kev's bang on. We need to kind of stick with what's working. It worked in the past. The season that we ended up finishing 4th, we stuck with the same team quite a lot, even though, ironically, people were still, because I think some people just have to complain about something. People were still complaining that even when... But it's right, isn't it? It's true. Like, we were literally sitting in Champions League spots for a nice chunk of that season. Yet some people are like, why doesn't he change it up? Why won't he do this? Why won't he do that? And I'm like, what do you want? What else do you want? Do you want us to just sit top of the table permanently? Nobody has a sniff. Eddie rotates the squad all the time. Everything's just mint. like come on, man, people. It's just not how it works. So no, and especially
Man
Eddie's.
City are saying they've got injury problems. We've got nothing compared to what we had last season when we finished.
They've got no idea.
Them and
They've got a
Arsenal, when
squad
they
on top
talk
of a
about
squad.
crisis, it's like the whole league needs shut down.
Yeah.
It's
We had
pathetic.
14 players unavailable at once. We had
gonna say.
14
We had a
players.
crisis.
We
We
had
had
Miley starting against PSG.
Yeah.
We had a 17-year-old kid having
Yeah.
to play because we
in
had
a bench
no
full of
players.
kids. Like they don't understand, but
They
it's,
don't
you know,
understand.
we'll not bother talking about them because they don't. When you've got a squad on top of a squad, it's irrelevant, isn't it? But no, in terms of what our lads deserve, nobody deserves to be dropped. So yes, we expect it to be the same. And if I'm honest, I think you probably will start Joe on the right, put Gordon back on the left where he's happy, but that's fine because Joe proves that he's working absolutely fine. Big Joe, in fact, now, and you know what it is, I was thinking about just the other day. I was watching the highlights of something, but it is true. He's become almost our most versatile player. And 100%. I was sitting watching it, and I know people talk about Bruno being that's exactly what I was about to say. You literally took the words out of my mouth. But yeah, so I was thinking, everyone talks about Bruno being instrumental, and he is, by the way. I'm not at all undermining what he does for the team. But to me, Big Joe is more important than pretty much anyone on that team right now.
Yeah,
because
and
of his versatility on top of everything else, by the way.
Yeah.
You could play him centre half against West Ham with Burn being out if you wanted, and he wouldn't let you down.
He could, though,
put him
couldn't
up
he?
front now, he'd probably
I think he'd be brilliant in centre half.
Honestly,
his work ethic,
unbelievable.
His work ethic and work rate is where we want it to be and what we like to see, isn't it? He is. And if you asked me when we first signed him, by the way, my opinion of him is completely switched. It's mental.
I was one of the rare ones who said there was a player in there. I actually backed up him and Hosselu, not that they played together, but I said the same about Hosselu and Joelinton. That's my claim to fame forever now.
Well, we didn't witness that, so
you didn't.
So we can't.
We don't know how true this is, to be fair.
We just think you might be not telling the truth there, but that's fine.
All 4 people who know me away from his podcast know.
Yeah, I agree with you guys on the starting lineup. I think it probably pick changes. I don't think he'll make any. Obviously, other than Kev saying, obviously the force changes. Yep, but I don't think anyone deserves to be dropped from that starting lineup. And I think Eddie himself knows he has found the perfect balance currently. Yeah. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how we will line up tomorrow evening. So I think we'll leave that there and go to our second advert read out by Kev.
This podcast is part of a global sports podcast network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football and fantasy football. That's a lot of football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network. Every club, every day. I got through it and I made it fun. See?
That's a lot of football.
Yeah, I hate to break it to you, Kev, but we are a football podcast.
We are. We're a good football podcast.
We are going to
We're only about 5-6 months in, but Kev's learning.
Yeah, I'm getting there. He's getting there.
I'm a little bit slow. It takes time to... Yeah.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Oh, dear me.
Right then. So just to round off the pod this evening, I thought we would quickly cover, well, not quickly, but I thought we would talk about, give some West Ham some airtime, quickly talk about the team that we think we would face and what challenges they may bring. And as always, we will do our score predictions at the end of the pod. So I'm going to be honest, I've not watched a lot of West Ham this season, but I do know they are struggling a little bit, aren't they? Since obviously new manager, etc., etc. So yeah, so I actually really quite like West Ham as a club, which is I don't really like seeing. Yeah, so yeah, I don't really like seeing clubs like that struggle. But how are we feeling? What do we think we could possibly struggle, or what challenges do we think that they may bring? Kev, come on.
I have watched probably a little bit more West Ham because one of my best friends is a massive West Ham fan. I think I told the story either on a practice pod or a real pod where he was at the 4-3 win with me, which was amazing. That was an unbelievable time to be alive. But yeah, I think in terms of how are we going to hurt West Ham, I genuinely think it's going to be the wide play. You look at West Ham's team, Emerson, the left back, I've always liked him, but it does look like this season he might now finally be past it after his Chelsea days and obviously West Ham now. Wan-Bissaka hasn't really done what we thought he was going to do when he left Man United and went to West Ham. He struggled. And then I think Max Kilman as well. He was brilliant at Wolves, the centre half, but he's had I don't know if he just had a torrid time because it's a new manager, a new way of playing, but with Moyes for so long. But it looks like we really struggle against pace. I think the danger man is obviously Jared Bowen, Lucas Paqueta. How is he still playing, by the way? I'm sure he got found guilty of like getting booked and stuff on purpose, and Tonali got banned for a year.
No
Paqueta's
idea.
allowed to keep playing until whatever happens.
I know.
But yeah, I think with danger men for them, it's got to be Somerville. He's very fast in terms of a winger. He's probably going to be up against Tino and Jared Bowen up against Lewis Hall. But I shouldn't say this. I'm a little bit less worried about Jared Bowen because Lewis Hall's in such good form. Well, that could come back to haunt us. If he scores 2 or 3, I hope that doesn't happen. But I'm just trying to be honest. And a weird one, even though he doesn't start, Danny Ings, he always seems to do well against Newcastle.
Yeah.
So if he comes off the bench, I'll be a little bit like, ooh. But I do love their number 4, Carlos Soler. I saw him play for Valencia when I went to Valencia to watch Valencia Atletico Madrid. He's an unbelievable player. I don't know why he didn't start the last game. He came off the bench, but I'm a big fan of him as well. So I think if we're going to hurt them, it's going to be pace and it's going to be out wide. I think if they're going to hurt us, probably going to be down our right and their left with Somerville. And again, Souček aerial threat's going to be really, really big, even though we've lost Dan Burn through suspension and we've got Thomas Souček, who is unbelievable in the air. So I think we need to be very careful defending corners.
Lovely. Joe?
I haven't watched as much as Kev would have, again, for reasons like Kev's just said, really, because he's got a pal who's a West Ham fan and I don't. So really it is just me keeping up on general news. I know obviously they haven't been brilliant this season. I think, what was it, 0-0 against Everton the last game, was it?
Yeah.
I thought their last game was Nottingham. Oh no, it was us.
Yeah, I'm sure they
the one
drew against
before
Everton.
Nottingham Forest,
anyway.
they got beat by 3-0.
All right.
So
can't remember. But yeah, it's pretty much the same sort of players like Kev's mentioned, I'll be honest. Paqueta, Bowen is always a worry. I'd still love Bowen to play for us, to be fair. So he's the player that if you were going to say who would just take out the West Ham team, immediately I would say Bowen. Yeah. It's almost pretty obvious with him being a right winger, but it's for multiple reasons. He is a great player, to be fair, overall. He can be dangerous. Yeah. But Kev's right. Because of Hall's kind of form that he's on at the minute, right, I can't speak, sorry. Our right side is probably still deemed as being slightly weaker. So Somerville might cause some issues down the left. But again, it's going to be interesting with Burn being out. You bang on there. So Kelly's got some kind of big boots to fill, so to speak, with that role, which we do expect Kelly to be the one to fill it. But again, we've got so much going forward. I'll not say my prediction yet, but I do see a decent amount of goals in the game, I've got to be honest. And we just need to hit them hard straight away. Kind of get something, get us on the front foot, them on the back foot, and get them kind of worried a bit, if you know what I mean.
Love it.
It's funny you say it, actually, because we've both, West Ham and Newcastle, both scored 13 goals in the league. We've conceded 11. They've conceded 19. So we've scored the same amount of us, but they've conceded 8 more.
So they're weaker at the back then.
It's a case of can we just attack and attack and attack?
Yeah.
In terms of how West Ham play, obviously David Moyes will have sat back, and other than Nottingham Forest, we spoke on this pod before, we sometimes struggle against teams like that, but we were so good against Forest, I wouldn't be as worried. Lopetegui's teams like to, historically, when he was Spain manager, Real Madrid, I can't remember the team he was in. It was a Sevilla, another team in Spain, I can't remember. The times I've seen his teams, they normally like to play out from the back. In terms of West Ham, style of play has been very up and down with Lopetegui. So we're not actually sure what we're going to get, but I think just attack them. Let them worry about us. Let them worry about us. Let them worry about our threats. We go at them. We've got the fans behind us under the lights in James's Park. Another reason why he shouldn't leave, because he'll lose under the lights in James's Park.
True.
But yeah, I think let them worry about us and just honestly just attack. Give Isak the ball. Give Gordon the ball. Run at them and hopefully turn them to face their own goal. That should be enough. But fingers crossed. We'll see.
I agree with the pair of you, and the only thing I will say is that I don't think West Ham's back line is, I wouldn't say strong enough, but I'll use that term, strong enough to deal with the Newcastle United high press. So this leads nicely into our predictions. I'm going to kick it off. I'm going for a 3-0 Newcastle, obviously. Joe?
I'm going 4-1.
Oh, yeah, good one.
Lots of goals.
Lots of goals. Come on.
Go on, man. I'll go 4-0.
Oh, did I get it right last time? I feel like I got one of the scores right last time.
You did 3-1.
Yeah. Pressure's on. Pressure is on.
I mean, to be fair, I'd take any of the scores you've just talked about there.
Ian was on holiday, so I just did it in honour of Ian because he couldn't give his prediction. So, yeah.
He was only on holiday. He wasn't gone for good.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. He couldn't give it.
It felt so long.
In honour of Ian.
So long ago. Anyway, thank you both for joining me on the pod today, and thank you everyone for listening. And we'll be back on Tuesday with a brand new episode.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.